Hello, a very good evening to you all our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. This is your host, Mable Naluwooza. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for tuning in. Today in our studios, we have a special guest who's going to be sharing his story with us. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Lloyd Young, aka Young Lloyd. Pleased to be here with Out and Proud.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure having you on this platform. Our viewers are going to learn a lot from you and from your story as well.
Thank you.
I've seen a lot. I read about your bio and your story, and it's really touching to put yourself out there, to fight for what you believe, to fight for who you are. And well, you have to believe it as well. You have to be confident enough and also come out and share the life you've lived and your story and your experiences with us. And on this platform, that is what we mostly do. We share our experiences, and because we know we want to create awareness, because coming from the countries we come from, most of us as part of the organization, many people and most of our members are really unaware, and that has really created a lot of biases.
Where do I begin?
Well, you can tell us a bit about your childhood.
My childhood?
Yes, or where you're from.
Where I'm from?
Yes.
I'm regarded as one of the, first and foremost, I have a Caribbean background.
Yes.
Both parents are Jamaican. They moved to the UK in the 50s and met each other through family introduction, and out of that relationship they got married, and here I am. So I was born in the UK, first and foremost, but I do assign myself to say black British, if I have to, but
Yes.
black Caribbean British or black Jamaican British, and these are some of the titles that I struggled with in an early age into my adulthood to establish who I am. You asked me kindly about my early childhood, and it's an interesting question. And if I think back to earlier childhood, I recall many times growing up, and I grew up in a very large household, though you can understand, but my early childhood experience brought up for me is how I felt in school, if I can go there. And my early experience of school was very difficult because I felt different. And I felt different not because of any gender identity. It was more that I felt different. And I felt different given that in the family home I had responsibilities, being the middle child out of 9. I later found out my mum said, she identified that I was very responsible in terms of managing money, very responsible about looking after my brothers and sisters. But growing up from age 7 to 9 and going into schools, I didn't really fit in. I felt I didn't fit in. And I spent most of my time in school at the back of the classroom dreaming about where I want to be. And if I could share openly, my experiences of dreaming was more about creating the character that I now understand what that was about. And I created a superhero. I was a superhero. And I used to sit at the back of the class often and remember the teacher tapping me with the ruler, or chucking a piece of chalk to wake up. But I remember those dreams was about being in a place that I felt safe. Because I didn't feel safe in school. I felt that I said it was different, and to prove that I belong in school and use sports as a way to fit in, I was a very fast runner. I played football, played basketball, but that's how I fit in. But I didn't fit in. I felt I didn't fit in.
So how did you? Well, you said you've created this superhero Did that really help?
Yes, it helped me through life and through life challenges. Being a superhero character, I remember I used to run to school. So I think it helped me through my childhood, teenager, and into adulthood, where I often face situations where I've been treated different, I've experienced being treated different. And I think this superhero character that I attached myself to made things slightly easier to get through life. And, you know, and at one point in my life, I realized this superhero had strength and power and to fight justice. That's how I saw it, fighting justice. And I thought I found that courage through that superhero to challenge injustice.
That's amazing. That's amazing that the superhero really did help through and, well, has achieved something, if I may say.
Thank you.
Well, a bit back through your childhood, when you were feeling, well, the difference, did you ever share this confusion or this emotion with anyone? Say your mom or your teachers or anyone else?
No. I say no. I couldn't find a route that I felt safe to share these experiences. And I can talk about the experiences and in the education system, and I think even today we are quick to label someone's differences. And I wasn't a high achiever. I didn't pass exams. I was labelled having a disability, dyslexia, whatever that meant, but I was able to use that today to explain some of my challenges. But really, it was labels that I was told or imposed upon me that I equally was confusing. My parents, when the teachers said, your son Lloyd's not achieving, my parents felt there was something medically wrong with me. So those were the challenges that I faced in sharing, having the opportunity to talk about why or what am I feeling? What's making me different?
Be
so
that
the answer
way.
was, or behave in a certain way. It wasn't unruly. My parents would say unruly, in the Caribbean would say unruly. That means difficult child, difficult one to manage. I wasn't. I was just different.
I like saying, we always use the word different, but I like saying special.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, that is an experience to share. And so what happened after that? Say when you got to adulthood, were you still facing the same problem, or did you get to understand how did you get to understand why you're different?
I can answer that by saying I, as a child, person brought up in the UK, I was exposed to situations, political discussions that my father had with his friends, and my dad and his friends used to sit in the living room. The living room was a special place. Children were not allowed, so I used to be the one that would make tea or serve them drinks, but really I used to listen to the conversations. And I remember names like Margaret Thatcher and Ken Livingstone. These are all politicians that back in the 70s and 80s were very prominent figures and were names spoken in the household. And I recall a situation when, you're probably too young to know this. Margaret Thatcher is a historical prime minister, and it wasn't Day being the first woman prime minister. And it opened doors. I remember in my house I was living, that my mum and her friends in the kitchen round cooking were talking about having a woman prime minister. And again, who I was, my specialness, I was able to look after the men, give them drinks, and I was also in the kitchen helping cooking. So I can hear both sides of the story. But I recall how my mum and their friends were very keen to have and wanted a woman prime minister, thinking that believing that a woman prime minister will make a difference to women's lives. I, at that time, realised how hearing these stories and how important it was to my parents and their friends, family members and stuff, justice meant a lot to our community. Voting meant a lot to our community. And I soon realised, for me, the interest I developed out of listening to these stories, again, stories is part of our education. That's where my education of learning about injustice came from. Listening to our family, my parents, listening to extended family, uncles and aunts, debating about politics, and taking what I've learned into everyday life. So I spent most of my life working experience, challenging injustice, standing up for injustice, feeling courageous. I can do this. I'm a superhero. I can do this.
I can make a difference.
And making that difference,
Yeah.
regardless of what I face with.
That does take some courage as well. It takes a lot of courage. Well, being, I should say, back in the days and being of the minority community and all that. Well, we've heard about your childhood and your lessons learned from home and your experiences. Could you tell our viewers about your life now?
Through those challenges, I found the need to be an openly gay man. There's a need for it. And I worked for a UK leading LGBTQ plus anti-violence service. This unique position, and I say unique position, has its challenges, but for me, through my upbringing, through what I've drawn from my experiences, there's a requirement for our community to see someone they can identify with. Yeah. And that is important to me, and that's where I draw my strength from. There's a need for it, to be that person, to enable our community to identify with someone who they can relate to when facing difficult challenge. And I say difficult challenges that come out of abuse or violation. So that's where I am now. My title is an independent sexual violence advocate. What that means is I support victim survivors where there are reports of sexual violence or abuse or some kind of hate, and supporting them in understanding the criminal justice system in the UK and Wales. And I say UK, it's England and Wales, England and Wales judicial system, which is very complex in itself and a minefield and often a deterrent, if not understood, for victim survivors when coming to that decision to report a violation.
Yes, I understand. Well, it's really, like you said before, you create, it's always good when someone comes to someone they can easily relate to. I think it creates a safe space for them to maybe openly share their experiences and how exactly they're feeling. That is such an amazing job you're doing, and it's really amazing. Well, as we have you today, if you don't mind sharing with our viewers, because many of our people, I should say, from the organization, they really do go through coming from homophobic countries where some countries, being a gay or lesbian person or part of the LGBTQ plus community is a criminal offense. People face a lot of abuse of all certain kinds, and they are always unable to report or find the right support. Even when they come from those places and come here, they are unable to share or talk about what they've been through. Even when they come here, they are again abused in different ways, rape, domestic abuse, but they're still unable to open up and share what they're going through, or even report or be able to seek the right support they need. They don't even know where to get the support from. Could you kindly share or have a word?
Many of the victims that I've worked with, including myself who haven't experienced that, find the language used by services equally abusive.
Yes.
I felt as a survivor of domestic violence that having to go to the police and report, and the police responding in a way that made me feel like I am the perpetrator, not the victim, was something that I had first-hand experience in. And having to recover from that alongside past experiences of abuse. And when I say abuse, we talk about earlier on childhood and having to fit in, layers of abuse. And if these abuse hasn't been treated, it's likely to have an impact on a victim or survivor that wants to report, wants to talk about. And I can give you an example. Through my work, I come into contact with victim survivors, and one of their stories, one of the areas that they do share is having to repeat themselves, having to repeat their experience, having to respond to professionals in a way that they have to relive the trauma again. When we talk about trauma, we have to talk about layers of trauma that from black and people of colour's experiences, we've come through experiences of trauma experiences. And if these traumas are not untreated, they were likely to come out in a way that is perceived that you're angry. You're angry black man, you're angry black woman. And that's what happened to me. The police, when I challenged that they're not doing enough for me, I felt I was being not only treated like a perpetrator, but equally not
abused.
Believed. But yes, I felt abused again. What I focus on as a victim survivor worker is listening to, giving the space, providing the space, allowing the individual to talk and be mindful that I may be the first time they're actually talking to someone that's actually listening to. So it begins with identifying someone who would listen to your story and not put judgment in place, not put prejudicial judgment that could potentially harm. So it's about listening, stepping back and listening to the story.
Could you share with our viewers any platforms or any where they can access this support?
Out and Proud is where you can access support.
Yes.
I can share. I met Abby 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago. And what was beneficial to Abby's story was the support from the community. And I think it starts with getting support from within your community. And me being here is one avenue of support. Being in the space about Out and Proud is another form of support. And I think for our community, we need individuals to be visible and trained and in a way that they can respond to when they hear someone's going through a difficult time, how to help them to navigate that anger, that experience in a positive way. We hear stories from within our community, from people whose living experiences here and now in abusive relationships that they cannot get out of. We hear about stories of our close friends, brothers and sisters, in relationships where the partner is controlling them. And what is controlling behaviour? Taking away someone's passport is control. Denying someone access in the community is a form of control. It's abuse. And it's a mental abuse. So when we talk about sexual violence or any kind of abuse, we need to understand there's a physical and there's the emotional. And when we talk about the physical, there's types of abuse that's linked to rape, and it starts with consent. It starts with consent. We don't go into a relationship or meet someone to be abused. We start with a consensual agreement. Agree to meet this person, agree to have a drink with this person, agree to share a bed with this person. We don't sign up in that agreement to be violated in that process. But you're asking me, what happens to a victim also that's in a situation is to talk to someone about it, talk to your friend about it, talk to someone from spaces like this, or try and identify with someone you can relate to, because it's important that you can try to make sense of what's happening. making that informed choice of going to the police. It's not just about going to the police and report it, like it says in the judicial system. I do encourage victims to think about talking and parking that experience to decide when you're ready. The UK law permits space for victims to decide when to report it to the police, when to go through the courts, when to step out of the criminal justice system, and what happens if you step out of the criminal justice system. No one should judge a victim or survivor on their decision to report, and that's what I advocate for. That's what I believe in, and that's the space I provide. And it begins with providing the space where it's trusted, safe, and empowering, that a victim can make their informed choice.
Well, because I understand sometimes when the victims go to report, well, they will maybe arrest whoever caused them harm. This person is totally ignored. They forget that they've been abused, they've been traumatized, they're reliving these things. This is going to carry on, so they're not really offered the right support, leave alone the support. They're not directed to where they can get support. They're very, well, that's it. That person has been arrested and that's it.
The victim survivors often share that similar experience with me, that they feel that the criminal justice system in the UK is heavily supportive of the perpetrator.
Yes, it is true.
I pause because I cannot give an answer to the judicial system. It is what it is, but where there are professionals like myself, as I said, my title is an independent sexual violence advocate. I can use my own experience and why I can identify with that perception of the criminal justice system that you shared. It's like I was moved to a safe house, and it was a safe house by one of the leading housing providers, St Mungo's, and I was further abused in there. I reported it to the workers at the hostel, but they treated me like I was the perpetrator. One of the issues that led out of reporting it, they issued me with an acceptable behaviour contract. An acceptable behavioural contract was, I need to behave. I was experiencing was abuse. I was in a gay man's house. And I thought, being in a gay man's house, in a diverse house, I'll be safe. It wasn't. I was in a house with other men that felt threatened by me being in a place like them. So I experienced banging on my door, seeing me as a sexual object, placing rubbish outside my door, spitting at me, and I reported these all to housing associations, and they wrote up a contract, acceptable behaviour contract, and I remember this clearly because it's their way of dealing with it, not seeing me as a victim, seeing me as a perpetrator. The behaviour they wanted me to stop was to stop having male visitors that made noise at night. Basically, they were telling me I shouldn't have sex after hours. I've reported the neighbour abusing me, and you're asking me to curb my behaviour. So I felt I was being judged, and I felt I was being judged on what I was being reported. So it's again, how do we ensure that victims from the black and people of colour community get a safe response to reporting? It's about challenging these services around their perception of black people of colour who come from the LGBT plus community.